We've heard videos saying, burn your bridges. Tony Robbins, the life coach, for instance, has said this. Burn your bridges. Go for it. Others say, don't be afraid to get on YouTube and create lots of content. Vaynerchuk has said this. Gary Vaynerchuk. Get over your fears of getting on the internet, he says. Others say, just be who you are and let the chips fall where they may. Yet a few put out videos to the contrary. Don't burn your bridges. Be a little cautious. Well, then how are we to know when to put out content, when to speak up, when to do anything that some call controversial or might ruffle some feathers? How are we supposed to know when to, quote, go for it, to commit? What is burning your bridges, thus? For instance, in the movie Notting Hill, with Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, at one point in the movie, there's a scene in which Hugh Grant appears in questionable dress, and reporters take photographs of that. She had stayed the night at his place, and her fretting is, it will be there to be looked at and drug up again from newspaper columns, these days the internet, forever and ever. How are we to know then when to act lest we regret acting? How are we to know when to, quote, burn our bridges or go for it, regardless, and not have to, quote, fret, worry that we, quote, made a mistake? Now, I'm not in alignment with all the things, for instance, said by Caleb Jones, but his advice in the dating circles was that there's one mistake that you can make, and that is to get a woman pregnant, and that is if you don't want the child, and she does. Well, whatever may be the case, that is his viewpoint as to the one thing you can do that you're going to pay a heavy price for. Others have said jokingly, of course, yes, once the child comes on the scene, it is expected by law and moral convention, if not empathy, to raise the child well enough to the age of 18. How are we to know then, in terms of content, speaking, talking, communicating ideas, what is a valid point upon which to launch? Do we, quote, burn the bridges in all respects or in only some respects? Well, I just used a key word there, perhaps, that has taken me my whole lifetime to come to grips with, and that is the word respect itself. I think a person can have much more freedom to speak their mind in any way, shape, or form if it is done with respect rather than disrespect, and that's in large part a matter of one's words and nonverbal communications, I believe. My father has a PhD in English literature and started the ball rolling for me in the writing department, so I have some inkling here, I believe. At any rate, I think then that's the two types of burning bridges issues. We burn the bridges, so to speak, in putting something out there, taking a risk, doing anything in life. But the blowback, I think, in any way, shape, or form can come, yes, in terms of a child to be raised, but secondly, in terms of content, is the blowback going to be bitter hatred and animosity because someone's respect, their self-esteem was dinged, injured? And that was because of our words, especially, that are hard to deprogram once we've heard them because they're in the dictionaries. If our content, what we say, what we do, the bridges we burn, the boats we burn, so to speak, does not involve content, speech, ideas having to do with respect impacted negatively upon, then I think that's a completely different matter. Hence, going back to Notting Hill, the movie with Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, Was the question, is such and such going to be dug up as to something said or done that was disrespectful, or just something of a different manner? If it's something concerning one's sexuality, one's race, ethnicity, one's viewpoints, that's one matter, I believe, but if what was said or done is disrespectful, then I think the blowback from that is 100 times or 10 times at least more significant. And I believe then that's the bottom line with regard to this idea of burning bridges or getting blowback, so to speak, when one commits, when one makes a decision, when one says something. Is the blowback going to be based upon a countermeasure to someone's self-esteem being measurably impacted upon negatively? I'll just mention one example, brought up, by the way, interestingly, in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Abraham Lincoln, once a president in the United States, of course, in earlier life had put forth some pamphlets anonymously across town, ridiculing a man in the town. Lincoln thought he could get away with it and make an impact, but it was discovered Lincoln was the originator of this pamphlet. He was challenged to a duel. Lincoln hired somebody, I believe a West Pointer, to teach him the fine art of dueling, and then at the last minute, friends intervened and the duel was called off. Lincoln's response then was to learn massively what I believe was the bottom line, and that is a message communicated with disrespect will get you a lot more blowback than a message committed or put out there, shall we say, in terms of burning bridges or burning boats, what have you, on any way, shape, or form of topic matter that may be disagreed upon or stimulate dislike or more, or rejection of the product or such, or us, and yet at the same time not involve disrespect. It's just a clash of ideas, shall we say, rather than injury to your self-respect level. That, I believe, is the burning of the bridge that is going to give us a heavy price to pay. And maybe sometimes the burning of the bridge in that respect may be the lesson we need to learn, ironically, with a heavy price to be paid. That can be learned in no other way than huge blowback, so to speak. So as I'm going on here, I'm thinking perhaps this idea of burning bridges may not be that bad an idea in all ways, shapes, and form, if you get to live long enough to work through the process of that bridge having been burnt involving disrespecting someone and having to pay a heavy price afterward for a period of time. Does one have enough time left on this planet, so to speak, to pay that price and come out the other end is a good question. For the damage to one's reputation, possible prison time, fines, what have you, can take a lot of time to overcome. Those are my thoughts then concerning burning bridges and being urged to burn bridges, being urged to put out content. If the content is respectful, that's one thing. If the content is disrespectful, considerably, and a number of people thus are impacted, the price in terms of blowback will be far greater in general, I believe. And that kind of putting out of content or burning of bridges or boats is something, I think, to keep an eye out for. Maybe that's a lesson someone who is very disrespectful from childhood, even with a good heart, so to speak, empathy-wise, but have been taught a bunch of words very disrespectful in manner, or not inventing the proper ones themselves, or learning how to bite their tongue at least. Now that's a different matter, I believe, and yet maybe that too is a lesson we may have to learn the hard way through what they call the school of hard knocks taught by the bridges that were burnt in terms of disrespect. A hard lesson to learn, perhaps one of the hardest lessons ever. Thoughts here?